Hey, welcome back to Stellar Horizons campaign game playthrough. This is episode 31. Let's see here, a couple of things just to start off. I think in the last video, the Americans, I had a resource issue here. I felt like I had mixed things up. During the video, I thought I had accidentally paid for the American 2CV4s that were at the asteroid belt and got readied. I thought I had maybe paid from there. I went back and looked at the video. I didn't do that. As best I can tell, just in a few minute gap, I just knocked these away, or I picked them up and did something with them. I certainly have knocked things around. So anyway, as best I can tell, this is the correct set of resources for the Americans. So that's correct. If somebody else has seen something different in the previous episode, let me know and I'll try to fix it. But that looks like the best situation there. There was a comment on Board Game Geek. I apologize if I forget the user. Was looking for just the occasional kind of slower overview of the game. So first, I guess we're going to kind of do a slower pan here from high altitude, just so you can kind of see. Let's see what that looks like. That's Alpha Centauri up there. So this being the asteroid belt, of course, it can be a little bit difficult even to sometimes see what the places are without the graphics. Jupiter system, and then down to Saturn, over to Uranus, up to Neptune, Kuiper belt, scattered disk. This is sort of the deep space astronomy is kind of off, and then back out to Alpha Centauri. So, and then we'll take a little quicker, sorry for the lighting. Hopefully that's, so what we've got here at Mercury, we've got a non-player faction base. Uh-oh, I think that was by, yeah. And not much to say else. Here at Mercury, Venus, it's got the volcanoes, it's all explored out. Earth, the near-Earth asteroids. On the moon, got these bases. Mars, got several people coming in. Of course, all three factions have a base there. Comet, Phobos and Deimos. The asteroid belt with its three locations. Of course, now everybody is Jupiter itself. And then we've got the Trojans and Greeks, Callisto, Ganymede, Europa, Io, Saturn, and its satellites. So that's kind of the main focus of exploration now, with a little bit at Uranus and its satellites. And these, of course, these are fives. Neptune, Triton, Galatea, Larissa, Proteus, Kuiper belt, Haumea, and Makemake, Pluto, Charon. So that is scattered disk, Sedna, Eris, Dysnomia. So there's an overview. Maybe I don't have much to comment on it. Obviously, there's crewed vehicles and robotic explorers flying all around. So we are doing 2113 build phase. We start off with the Russians. They are doing an orbiter and a flyby for 7 billion. I think we had a lot of, it's been a couple of days, had a lot of robotic explorer failures recently by just about everybody. So Asians are building their good orbiter. They still have a one flyby. The Russians still have their one orbiter and a telescope. The Americans, they're getting a little low on cash now. They've only got $6 billion left, and they're spending $10 billion, because they're out of launch vehicles. They had both of their LV-4s fail last turn. Building a rover. They are going to be selling fuel here at their Mars base, making, I think, $12 billion. So they've got a little more money coming in. And so that is the builds, other than, I've still forgotten here, the Russians just, I think, are the only ones who have a crewed vehicle that needs to be readied. So the CV-5 at the asteroid belt. And they've got stuff for that. So that's a fuel and a supply. And gives them back. So they've got still a good amount of ore. That's 10, 14 ore, 6 fuel. So supplies were their shortest, but they've got 6 more. That's right here at the base here at Ceres. So that takes care of the builds. Transfer box movement. Russian ship and a Russian orbiter. The orbiter is going for the sun observation at Mercury. The CV-3 is just going to do the exploration, and possibly it might buy some supplies. Nothing here. This telescope's not in a transfer box. We're pushing up. I guess we don't really need to do that so much anymore. There's a lot less Earth activity. So I'll move the telescopes over there, because it's more likely now that some of these higher numbered transfer boxes are going to come into play. Here at Mars, we've got several vehicles coming in. Those 2 crewed vehicle 6s, and then these guys were coming from farther away, and they are in the 1 box now. Nobody's arriving at the asteroid belt this turn. We've got quite a few things here. All of this was in the 1 box. And arrives at Jupiter. Saturn also has got a rover, a flyby with a probe. And the Asian orbiter at Uranus arrives. It looks like all of the mandatory movement. So regular Russian movement. Let's see here. So crewed vehicle 3 goes to Mercury, no need to roll. Orbiter is going to move to that sun observation spot. 73, no problem. So this is just a special spot. No crewed vehicles or rover exploration. Treat as an orbit. It's a physics exploration location. It has radiation, which doesn't affect us anymore because everybody's got the techs for that. So the orbiter is just going to be able to sit there and do exploration. Oops, sorry. Observe the sun. Next up, so the Russian CV-6 is going to move out to the comet. It's the best Russian exploration vehicle we've seen yet, I think. Here at the asteroid belt, the Russians have a CV-5 and a CV-4. So, and they've already sent a CV-4 with 6 supplies. So this one will be able to establish a base for the Russians. It doesn't have a cargo capacity for any additional resources for building facilities. So this CV-4 needs to load up with materials to build facilities. and up to 6 of them. Well, I think what it's going to do, and this might be, it's going to get 3. No, it's not. I was going to say it's not taking supplies. It's taking fuel and ore. Oh, but it does need 1 supply because we certainly want to build a mining station. So it's going to need 1 supply and 1 ore for a mining station. And then I guess it's going to take 2 ore and 2 fuel, which will let it start building, going up the supply station and spaceport. But this certainly won't be enough to get them as far as I need, but this will be a start. So that'll be the 6 resources that CV4 takes. And then the question is, what do we do with the CV5? Well, the CV5 is an exploration and combat vehicle. There's no CV explorations left at Jupiter until they get a small spaceport, which is a minimum of, it's going to be like 4 turns away before they could possibly do that. I think maybe 3 if they're lucky. So what do we do with that? Well, we can send it to Mars and go explore the comet. Go ahead and send it to Jupiter. It doesn't have a lot to do right now. I think, so with that being said, I think we're actually just going to defer and leave it there. The Russian, okay, so now the Russians need to make a decision. Where are they going to build a base? Well, Europa is the best spot. So they'll be competing with the Asians. But even if they come in, on an initiative situation, that's 9, this one's 8. So if they beat the Asians on initiative, then they'll get 1 more supply. Otherwise, they'd be the same as they would be at Callisto. So I think that's the right play there. I'm just looking. Okay, nothing else for the Russians here. Russians, they've got a flyby with a probe, so we'll take care of that in the exploration phase. So I think the only other things to do are these launches. Both of them are an LV4. Orbiter's definitely going to Saturn. The flyby will also start off going to Saturn. So we'll just roll both of those. First the orbiter. 40, rockets recovered. 58. In both cases, launch vehicles recovered, and pretty sure that distance, on an LV4 is still a 1-year journey. So I'll put the flyby on top because they can explore with it. And that's all the Russians' movement. All right, next up, Asians. Well, the Asians have their crewed vehicle 6, and it's also going out to the asteroid belt. They've got a crewed vehicle 4 here. They are going to take it a slightly different tack. They're going to come out here and pick up the supplies. their Tara base has only got ore at this point, so they're out of supplies, they're out of fuel. But they can pick up, well, 6 of that. They can't even get the 7th. But they'll pick that up. And let's see here. They've got a CV3 that has brought resources out here. It's going to come over to Europa, and it's going to dock up with the CV4. They only need, I think, 1 more supply. So the CV3 is actually, yeah, we'll talk more about that when we get to it, but I think they're going to be able to build their base this turn. No Asian movement here. This orbiter needs to roll. And it got a 1. That's just a straight up engine failure. Old school. That gets the, doesn't happen often, but it does happen. There's an engineering marker pull for that. Asian got 1 point. The Asians are also launching their orbiter on an LV4 out to Saturn. 85 rocket is recovered, and that orbiter comes out here. And that should be all of the Asians' movement. Next up, Americans. They've got the 1 launch. I'm just trying to think. They've got this 1 rover. Yeah, I think they'll still send it to Saturn, so let's go ahead and do that. Launching on an LV4. 56, so the rocket is recovered. The rover is also going to come out here into the 1 box. All right, we've got vehicles coming in, but that's a year away. The Americans do have a CV4 here at their Spirit base. So it started there. It's loading up the supplies on the Spirit base, 7 supplies, and the question is, do they want to take it to the Freedom base or just go ahead and move it out to Prosperity? And I think the answer is they want to take it out to Prosperity. So when it leaves, no die rolls required. So it'll be in the 1 box at Jupiter. And what is this guy doing? Well, this guy is bringing a ton of ore and supplies and is moving over here to be stacked up at this location. So all of these, this is again the Prosperity base. So the Prosperity base now all of a sudden has quite a bit of stuff. And now they can, now they've got all the fuel and ore they need to get their supply station, and they'll still have a little bit of fuel left. Yeah, or at least 1 fuel left and supplies to build spaceports and things like that. So that's good. Pathfinder rover, again, they are going to skip on the Titan research here because I think next turn they can send out these CVs to Saturn because they'll be able to build the spaceport this turn. And that's what they needed. So the rover, I think they're going to send it to Mimas where it gets the bonus. Movement roll is pretty simple, 74. So this rover Pathfinder is coming out here. And that's a flyby, okay. That looks like that is all of the Americans' movements. Next up, the explorations. Well, we start with the Americans. And there's no exploration going on here. So it's not till we get to Saturn. They've got an orbiter, a rover, and a flyby. And we'll start off with the rover. So it's a 7 plus 7, 14. They get a 1 and a 31, so they are pulling 2 biology markers. A 1 and a 2. Next up, they'll do the flyby at Hyperion. So that's a 5 plus 4 is a 9. That's a success, a 27, not a malfunction. Hyperion is engineering type. And they got a 1. And let's go ahead and do the engine check roll for the flyby. 35, no problem. And the flyby moves on to Uranus. Orbiter is a 4. And they will target, they're going to go for Hyperion. So 4 and 4 is 8. -1 for the distance. So that's a 7. 80, but a 9. So no success there. Do the Americans have? They just got a rover coming in. And we just did that. This American orbiter at Uranus. They're going to target Uranus proper. So it's a 3 plus 4 is 7. A success, 91. So that's a physics. Let's see what we get. 5. Depletion. Is it 4? No. Okay. So that goes there. Americans are getting a political marker. And I think that was a 4. Getting reduced down to a 3. Orbiter does not have a spectrometer, so there's only 1 world card. Pull. And C-class asteroid does not apply. Life check, 2%. $99. That looks like all of the American exploration. Next up, the Asians. They've got their telescope. They'll target deep space astronomy. That's 6 now, is halved to 3, and plus telescope and text, so it's a 6 now. It had been a 7 up until their most recent depletion. 3 though, and a 96, so that's a physics success. And they got a 2. Next up for the Asians, here at the Comet. So 7, let's see here. Did the Asians get the +3 tech? They did. So that is a 10 +3, 13. $87, so no recall, and a 2 means they get to pull 2 physics markers for the Comet, and they get to add them together for the check for depletion. The first one is a 2, so they're guaranteed the depletion at this point. And they got another 2. So that is an advantage to crewed vehicles. That is a politics marker for the Asians. That 3 goes down to a 2. There is no world card for the Comet, and it's a 4% life check. $58. All right, next up, nothing here. They're going to do a mining there. There's no exploration to do, but so the flyby does have a probe. So I guess it's going to drop the probe on Jupiter. So probe is an 11. 12 plus 6 is 18. And they got the 8, so they are pulling 2 physics markers. A 1 and a 1. And then we do an engine check for the flyby, a 45. We'll put it under the Russian one because the Russian one is actually going to get to go this turn. There's nothing else there. They've got a rover. So the Asians do want to do this. That's 6 plus 4, 10. Automatic success. Just checking for a malfunction. No malfunction. Titan is biology. And it's a 3, so that's another depletion. Titan goes to 3, and the Asians get another political marker. Also a world card. And the world card pulled is silicate rocks. Same as same thing. And the life check is 9%. $15, good, but not good enough. So I think that takes care of all of the Asians' explorations. Turn their probe. Now it's the Russians. They've got their CV. And they've only got the +2 tech for CVs, so that's a 6, +1 is a 7. But they did get it in an 86, there's no recall. So that is engineering. And they got a 5. So that's great for them. Political marker. 1 gets flipped to a 0. They're going to be pulling a world card for Mercury. I'm going to have to take you down this way because and it's chasms. So let's take a look and see what they want to go with. The chasms applies. It certainly is better than the cratered surface, or more interesting. So it improves, and they'll go ahead and do the chasms. There's a life check, 2%. No life. Next up, the orbiter. So the orbiter is +1, so it's a 2 and then 5. So a 7. $99 and a 10. So no malfunction, but no successful exploration. Next up is the Russian crewed vehicle here. So it's a 7 +2 is 9, 10, 11. They do get to roll 2 red dice. So if they get a 1 on either one of these, they'll get 2 markers. 95, so no recall, but no success with the exploration, so they just get their automatic 1, and that is a 2. Next up, I'm just thinking that was probably a little silly of me not to have sent the Russian CV5 back over here to the comet. We'll play it as it stands. Maybe they can get over here to Saturn and make a difference this decade. Next up for Russian exploration. Let's see here, this guy's not doing anything. He's just building a base. But out here, we've got a rover, flyby with a probe, and another flyby coming in. Well, I think the Russians are actually going to save this probe for Uranus, where there's a bonus. So this flyby will still go ahead and risk it. So it's a 3. And they will target Titan. So a 6 for Titan. A 3 is a success, 77, no malfunction. So they're pulling a biology for Titan. And that number is a 1. And then we're going to do the engine check. A 7, that's still fine for an engine check. And we'll go to Uranus. This flyby is a 4. It's 1 year out though, so we'll knock it back down to a 3. And it's also going to go, I think they'll go for Hyperion. So 3 plus 4 is 7. It's a 10, 65, no malfunction, just no success. And then finally the rover is a 5 plus 7, 12. $47 and a 5, so they just get the 1 biology marker at Mimas. And it's a 2. So that takes care of that flyby, that rover. That flyby is already gone this turn. So that is all of the Russians' explorations. Remote mining. And I don't believe that. So again, I need to clarify with Andrew. You know, this guy explored. Can he also, could he remote mine right now? Probably do it if he could. No remote mining out anywhere here. So the only one that I know is going to do it for sure is this CV3. Although its cargo is full, it's in a fleet with this CV4 and can load it into this CV4. And that's what it will do. Mining for supplies, the number is a 9. So 66, no recall. It's actually a 10, but that's fine. They only had room for 1 more supply anyway. So swapping that out to be 6 supplies. And that's all of the remote mining. Let's see here, trade and base construction. Let's look at our trades. Well, the Asians are not trading supplies right now. But they'll work on that. Yeah, the Americans, so none of those trades are going to happen right now. Over here, nobody wants to do those either right now. So no trades. Base construction, however. First of all, we've got the Americans are going to upgrade their large supply station to a small spaceport. So it costs 3 ore and 3 fuel. And now they have the range to send CV5. So next turn, the American CVs can head to Saturn. Are they doing anything? This Freedom is the asteroid belt. They do have enough resources here to build a settlement, but they're not going to do that now. So I think they are set. Russians, and I'm just doing these left to right. It normally is done in some sort of initiative order. Okay, Russians. Same situation here, and the Asians not doing anything here. But what both the Russians and the Asians are doing is expending 6 supplies out at Europa to build bases. So the Russians will build Salina base, and I think we'll go with Ekata. So those bases are going to get built at Europa, and now everybody's got something going on, and these resources are going to get unloaded at the Europa base. And that's all over the base construction. That finishes the turn. In just a minute, we'll be back with the builds for the year 2114. Okay, for the builds for 14. Starting with the Russians. Russians aren't building anything. They would have built an RE if they could, but their support limit is 1, and they have 5 of them on the board right now, so they cannot build anymore. The Asians still can. They're building an orbiter for 2 billion. They like the idea of sending that to the sun observation point. So they're going to follow along with the Russians, and the Americans are going to do another flyby with a probe. First stop is going to be Jupiter. The Americans would love to get this last depletion at Jupiter, so that they can make sure that if a valid world card is pulled, that it doesn't swap out. So the helium-3 is very nice for them, 6 fuel. If something like the hydrogen, that would lose them to production. So they want to stick with what they've got. So those are our builds. Movements. We've got an American CV3, Asian CV5. It's the Asian CV5 is coming to explore the comet. The CV3 is bringing fuel over here to sell. I think that ended up being 1 more than they needed, or 2 more. But that's the way it worked, because I'm trying to remember why they pick up so much, is because they were at Mercury and mined an asteroid. Nothing here in the transfer box movement. We've got an American CV4 and a Russian CV4. I guess I have made a mistake, or a small one. The Asians, they would have spent an ore and a fuel, and we failed to do that in the base construction phase. So we built the base, and then didn't let them build their 1 facility per turn. So they are already at the small facility. That's those movements. Tons of flybys and orbiters and rovers. Put all that out there. And then same thing here, flyby and a probe and a flyby. So that's all the transfer box movement. First to move the Russians. Well, that's CV3. There's no more exploration that it's going to do. Their relations with the South Americans allow them to buy 2 supplies. The Russians are thinking that that's not a terrible idea, so they're just going to go ahead and come over here, since they've come this far, and grab that. So they'll take care of that this turn. I keep on forgetting that the that they can just move up those resources whenever they want. So maybe we'll remember to do that this turn. At the Mir base, this is a Russian movement. CV6 stays to explore. So the CV5, they are going to, they'll just go ahead and move on to Jupiter. So they'll go to the 1 box. This Russian CV4 is going to move over here and unload those supplies at the new Russian base, which I think was, yeah, Teslina. So they've got some stuff to start building with. And the other CV4 now. So the thing they're going to be short on is both ore and fuel. So they need to do some of that locally. So the CV4 that was there before is going to come out here to Jupiter and do some remote mining for fuel. If somebody needs to mine for ore, EO has got 5 ore. And that's the best place for ore. So even the Greeks and Trojans are just a 3 for ore. They'll go for the sure thing right now, or the more sure thing. Other Russian movement here? No. Russian movement here? Yes. They've got an orbiter that's going to move into orbit. So we'll do an engine check. No problem. Flyby we'll handle shortly. So they've got a flyby there, and they're not launching anything. So that's all the Russians' movements. Next up, the Asians. Let's go ahead and do their orbiter launch. I think just launching Mercury is a distance of 2, so there's no reason to use the 4. They'll use the LV-2. 72 rocket is recovered. Orbiter goes out to the 1. Asian CV5 is going to come out to the Comet. Next up for the Asians, the CV4 at their base, T-base. It's going to load up 6 supplies. Let's see here, I'm going to do it this way. Do the 6 as 2s. And 1 left over. And these 6, it's going to leave the asteroid belt and head back to Mars, primarily because they need, or they'd like to sell a bunch of supplies. So I guess the Asians are being kind of pulled in 2 directions, and I'm not sure if I'm making the right choices here. They want more resources at their base, of course. Here's the new base. To be able to build up. They've got a CV3 and a CV4 that can do some remote mining out here. And so they'll work on that, and they'll take those supplies because they'd also like to make the money. I think they're playing, hopefully, you know, they're not going to spin through all that. They're going to make a bunch more. They're going to sell a whole bunch of ore. What are we going to sell on ore? They're at 8 settlements, so they can sell 8 ore, so that's $16 billion more dollars. They can sell as 10 supplies. That'd be $20 billion. So I think the idea here for the Asians is if they can just accumulate a bunch of cash, they can use that to either buy the crude vehicles that they need on Earth or use that cash to pay for tech points with the different technologies that allow for that. So let's see how that works out for them. I don't know. So that was that movement. Movement over here. So they do have these 2 crude vehicles that are ready to go. Yeah, they want fuel and they want, so they're going to kind of do just like the Russians. They'll have one of them come over here for fuel and the other one come over to EO and go for ore. Movements here, they have an orbiter, so they want to move that into orbit, and that's going to take an engine check. That's fine. So we've got 3 orbiters again. Here it's Saturn, 2 flybys, and that looks like all of the Asians' movements. Next up, the Americans. They are launching a flyby and a probe on an LV-4 from Earth. 89, that's a good launch. Do they have anything in the inner system? They do not. Well, we certainly know that these 2 CV5s are going to head for Saturn. The CV4 could also do it, but these guys are both very good explorers. So the question is it better for the Americans to do some remote mining here in the Jupiter system? The Americans are actually quite resource rich. This is the asteroid belt, this is Mars, this is Jupiter. I'm glad I have at least a progression here. And that's the moon. So if they had more resources, what would they do with them? They actually don't need to build a large spaceport here right now, although they'll want it probably eventually. So I think just getting resources, so there's that CV4, and of course I didn't even take it into account this CV4 that's just arriving. So this one is moving out and we're going to make a choice on that, but it's even more supplies that they've got. So they've got a huge number of supplies, some ore and some fuel. So fuel and ore is the thing that they need. And then the other question is there a better place out at where's the best place to get ore right now? That's a 7 at the asteroid belt. That's pretty good. 5, 5, 4, 2. So if they want more ore, going back to Vesta is a legit choice. And so I think they'll do that. So that's that CV4. This one's there. American Rover. Need to roll for it. Engine check. That's a 7. That's okay. And it's going to head over here to Hyperion. believe that is all of the Americans' movements. So with that, on to explorations. The Americans' explorations, I'm sure they don't have anything in the inner system. Jupiter flyby, they could target Jupiter. Let's see here, what would that look like? That would be a 4, plus 1 is a 5, minus 1 for the distance, back down to a 4. I think they'll just wait and use the probe. Let's do these rovers before we do the orbiter. So rover here is a 6 plus 4 is a 10. It's an automatic. Malfunction 83, no problem. That's engineering. And they got lucky with a 5. So that's, let's see here, at 4 is going to a 3. And the Americans are going to get another political marker. I'll just swap out one of those. That is a spectrometer on that rover, so they're going to get 2 world cards. And I think once again they're going to, yeah, neither one of these, surprisingly, neither one is going to work. C-class asteroid requires minimal gravity. Hyperion has low, and volatile atmosphere is one of the things for the gas giants. Or I guess it can also apply to Venus. Life check there, 4%. Nope. Next rover is a 6 plus 7, 13. No malfunction, and they got the 3 on the red die, so that is 2 biology markers for Mimas. A 1 and a 2. So now the American orbiter. It's going to go for, I think this, it's a 4 and 4. They're going to go ahead and try Saturn. It's not the best choice, but 4 and 1, 5, 50% chance here. They got a 6, but no malfunction. And now they'll do their flyby. So the flyby is a 5. It's going to target Uranus. So an 8. Which is a success, a 23. That's they're at 18%, so they're okay. And then we'll go ahead and do their engine check. That's fine. So the flyby was a success, doing physics. And that marker is a 5. So that's another depletion, another political marker. Americans have had really good luck here in the physics. Just 1 world card pull for that flyby. Impact basin. So no success there. card shuffle. Life check, 2%. No life. He said the flyby had a good, that's 1 year travel time. Now the orbiter is a 3, and they are going to, they're going to actually go for more physics. So 3 plus 4 is 7, minus 1, 6. $20, still okay on the malfunction, but a 10, so no exploration. That's all of the Americans' explorations. Next up, the Asians. Their orbiter has not arrived yet, but the telescope can still do, I think, deep space astronomy. Now that it's a 6, these other 6 locations are just as valid. And in fact, the one that I missed out on before, Kuiper Belt, is a 7. So that's actually the location to check out. So 7 halved 3.5, rounded to 4, so this will be a 7 and not a 6. 6 is good, 91. Physics pull is a 5. So that's a depletion for a political marker and a 6. And if you're forgetting why it has a world card, that was a random event in one of the early decades, just to pull a world card. Roll the dice and pull a world card for a location. So 6, but we need to pull a world card now. And we have cratered surface. Well, it is rocky or icy, so it could apply, but I think they are going to leave it as water ice. And the life check, that gives a +4, and that's 6. So that's a 10% life check. $56. So we probably have been neglectful there, not realizing that those telescopes had a 10% life check. Opportunity, no life with that one. Like I said, 56. All right, that was the telescope. Okay, next up, we'll do the, I'm trying to decide if there's an advantage one way or the other. We'll go with the CV6 first. So it's a 10 plus 2, 12. They got it. They got the 2, so they get to pull 2 physics markers and 98. No recall. First physics marker, it's a 1. Second one is a 2. So that's another depletion. Which is a political marker. Goes to a 1. And the life check here is 4%. 22. No life. Next crewed vehicle is a 5, plus 3 is 8, plus 1 is a 9. They did get the 9, 52, just 1 physics marker. but it's a 3. And that is why the Russians didn't want to send their crewed vehicle 5 from the asteroid belt out here. Because now that one's gone to a 0. It's another political marker for the Asians. And another life check at 4%. No. Next up for the Asians. Okay, this crude vehicle is going to mine. That guy's going to mine. There's no explorations for them. We've got a orbiter, flyby, and a rover. Let's do the rover first. So 6 plus 3. 9. They got a 69 and a 10, so no malfunction, no exploration. Next up, the flyby is going to go. It's a 4. It has a spectrometer, so 4 plus 5 is 9. That's a success, and a 38 is no malfunction. Biology marker pull for Titan is a 5. So that'll be another depletion here at Titan. But I think the Americans they'll be able to swing in there and you know, again, the Americans are trying to pick up this this crewed vehicle exploration mission at Titan, and the Asians are trying to run it out before the Americans can get there. So we did that. We need to pull world cards. 2 world cards for Titan. First is C-class asteroid. Next one is cratered surface. Well, the S-class asteroid obviously doesn't apply, and the cratered surface is quite boring. They're going to keep it as a spectrometer because they have a spectrometer on their orbiter. So they can still try to get some additional depletions. The life check, Titan 9%. $74. So then next up is, let's do an engine check for that flyby. 74 again. Heading out to Uranus. Orbiter is a 5. Plus 4 is 9. Minus 1 down to 8. So that is a success, no malfunction. And the orbiter's biology marker pull for Titan, starting to get low on biology markers, is a 2. So there's no depletion there. Ooh, okay. And I just realized I made a mistake, and I'm going to let the Americans fix that. So we said, hey, this American CV4, what's it going to go for? It's going to head back to get ore at Vesta. I totally, I pushed that asteroid out of the way. That CV4 absolutely is going to go get that asteroid. Even if it's not ore, it's still a victory point. And it's got a 40% chance of being ore, so. And whatever it is, it's useful. And I think that was the orbiter that we just did. It pulled it pulled a 2 biology, so there was no depletion. That's all of the Asian stuff here. They do, that flyby just flew on. So that is all of the Asians' explorations. Next up, the Russians. Orbiter at the Sun observation spot is a 2 plus 5, 7. (51 and 2). Success, that's a physics. And it's a 2. Next up, so now this Russian CV6 doesn't have anything to explore. Initiative makes a difference. Nothing here, so we're going to go back into the remote mining thing pretty heavily. They've got an orbiter, a rover, and a flyby. Well, let's start off with the rover. It's a 5 plus 7, 12. (51 and an 8), so a single biology marker for the Russians, and that is a 2. Next up, after the rover, let's go ahead and do the flyby. They're going to, actually let's do their orbiter, and they'll target Titan, so that's a 3 plus 4 is 7, minus 1 is 6. (97 and 2). A successful biology marker pull, and that is going to be a 3. So they're getting close. The 2 goes down to a 1. So the Americans are, it's getting tougher. 1 political marker for the Russians. And that was a Russian orbiter with a spectrometer. So we're pulling 2 world cards. Cratered surface, an S-class asteroid. Well, S-class asteroid doesn't apply. Cratered surface could, but again, the spectrometer gives the Asians and the Russians an advantage. It's not going to help the American crewed vehicles. So I think they'll keep it with the spectrometer bonus there. If the Americans, they'll have their shot with their 2 CVs next turn first. And of course, we haven't done the flyby yet, so we'll go ahead and do that one. It's a 4 plus 1 is 5. The Russians say, why not? (66 and a 9), so no success, no malfunction. And then we need an engine check. That's a 70. So the Russian flyby moves on. And now the Russians have this flyby with a probe, and it's going to use the probe. There's a 4 probe bonus here at Uranus. So that's a 10 plus 6, 16. What did we get? An 18 and a 4. Well, the black dice, I didn't need to roll them. So ignore the black dice, even though that would have been a malfunction, but there's no malfunction roll for probes. So the 4 is a success. That's under the 4 that they needed. So they're getting, or under the 8 that they were. Okay, I'm gonna have to, what did we say? Yeah, 10 plus 6. So it was a 16, that's it. Anyway, they get to pull 2 physics markers. That's the important part. They got a 2 and a 1, so no depletion. And then there is an engine check for the flyby. 20, no problem. Flyby moves on. And that looks like and there's the situation there. So we've got going on at Saturn. So while I just stand here and observe, I'll try to have a little bit better camera shots. I really need like an overhead arm mount or something like that. Okay, that's all of the exploration. So remote mining, and I know we've got that. Just making sure there's nothing in here, and there's not. But at Jupiter, we've got the Asian CV6. So again, that's an 11 fuel. They did roll a 5, so it's going to get a recall. It's also going to pick up 2 fuel with the 6. So 2 fuel, but it's flipping and earning a biology marker. And that biology marker is a 2. Next, Russian crewed vehicle mining for ore. Target number is a 5. It's a 7, so just a single ore, 49, no recall. One ore. Russian CV going for fuel, and they get to subtract 1 on their red die. Uh, 96 and a 7, so 2 fuel for that guy. No recall. So I think that's all of the exploration phase. Next up, trade and base construction. Well, I am seeing here that I missed a movement. The American CV here, sitting in the had arrived in the flyby box's turn. So it would have moved in to the American Mars base there and unloaded that fuel. And in the trade, they are going to sell, and their limit with 5 is 6. So they're going to sell 6 fuel. In fact, I don't think it's going to unload the other 2. But they're going to sell 6 and get $12 billion. We'll move that. Anybody else want to execute any? So I don't think anybody's going to do anything else right now. I take that back. The Russians are going to buy, the limit is 2, so they're going to buy 2 supplies for $1 billion from the South Americans. And that reminds us that they wanted to go ahead and do this one. So they will buy on Earth 3 ore for $3 billion, ship it up, and sell 4 that they're allowed. They already had 1 there. So it's see here. They're going to sell 4 for a total of 8 billion, and we didn't take away the 3 yet, so they just net 5 billion. And they had the cash to do that, and that takes care of that sell marker. Okay, I think that is all of the trades. Base construction. So again, the Americans are sitting on enough resources to do 1 settlement, but there's no pressure. Out at Jupiter, they've got the small spaceport and the small mining station. They could certainly they can go for a larger mining station. Same thing here. They could up their refinery even more at the asteroid belt. And that's actually probably worth doing. That will be, except that's going to cost them 4 ore and 4 supplies, and they don't have either of that there. And I have also flipped over. So they're a supply and an ore short from upgrading that. But they can get supplies from Mars easy enough. Anyway, that's a lot of chit chat to decide to do nothing right now. Yeah, I'm just going to wait. Russia. This is the asteroid belt. And it's got lots of stuff. But they are at their going to spend a fuel and an ore to do a small supply station here. And then the Asians, they don't have enough to upgrade this, and they don't have anything else that they're doing at any of their bases. So that looks like all of our builds. I'll have to kind of sit down and make a plan for what the Russians think they're going to do at the asteroid belt. They're sitting on a bunch of resources and not quite making use of it, but we're only halfway through the decade, so I don't think the only things that are actually going to make a difference here during the decade are the levels of the spaceport / supply stations that they get to, which would then unlock the ability to travel to Saturn. Sorry for the bad camera action there. Any of the other facilities, the mining stations and settlements aren't going to really make a difference too much. The settlements could make a difference if it changes the amount of resources being able to be bought or sold from a trade marker if they hit one of the levels, but other than that, I'm not seeing a big pressure. So with that, we'll wrap it up. When we come back, it'll be the year 2115. Thanks a bunch.